for some interesting kind of session that happens with you folks. So the rise of the emerging markets is trend number 2. As of this year, the GDP contribution shifts from advanced to emerging economies in the global economy. We now have enough development in these emerging economies that they account for more GDP. Our recession helped some, since since the advanced economies are not growing very fast. But if you just look at it, this is sort of the lineup. I remember about 12 years ago when China wasn't even on this chart. They're now over 8 billion. We're up around 15. And what's interesting is that you've got Brazil on the chart now, and you've got China sometime around 2020 will be larger than the U.S. economy. I always put California in there because it's my state, and I think it's kind of fun. It's like it's ungovernable whether it's a state or a country. So. These are the emerging markets that are on the move. So this, if you look at 2030, which is the lighter green and the dark blue, is GDP in 2050. You can see as you go along the bottom there, we get India in the top 10. We've got China number 1. We're number 2. India, we've got Brazil, we've got Mexico. People never think about Mexico. Mexico's hot. Mexico's really going to be a big, big, interesting country over the next 20 years. So it's, and we see the European countries slipping down and not growing very fast. The reason we grow in the United States is because of immigrants. We have a higher birth rate. So that's the only reason we don't look like other advanced economies. So China continually surprises. We're not going to go through all the countries, but you really need to get to know about China. China is this unbelievable, it's going to be the biggest economy in the world in the next 10 years. It's already getting close to having purchasing power parity. And it's the obvious one. But what's most interesting, and China's great, I've done a lot of work in China, it's a great country. The forecast is, can you tell me my future? I would, but I can't read Chinese. So that's kind of fun and true. But anyway, so this is just a look at just these new diverse markets everywhere. I don't think people realize how exciting it is and how many countries are coming up. So this is kind of the top 20 according to who will have the most GDP over the next, between 2013 and 2017. That's 5 years. And here's the list. Obviously China, there are many countries here in this room represented. Peru's here. South Korea's here. Chile, I think, is here.
Yeah.
But look at Poland, look at Mexico's here, Brazil's here. This is very exciting. We have been able to develop the globe enough that we've got all these great emerging economies, and it's a very exciting time. So this is all positive news. And then some of the countries on there are from Africa. So the least developed continent is beginning to have pockets of economic growth, pockets of development, primarily because of relationships and networks and partnerships and investments by other countries, China being one, the US being another, and because of technology. Now all of a sudden we can be connected to every village in Africa, and they can leverage knowledge from the internet, and they can create small businesses, they can do crowdsourcing for some funding. It's a very, very exciting time, and we should all be thankful about it. But it's diversity off the charts. I'm not going to go through all these, but everything is transitional and experimental in these countries. They're moving from agricultural to industrial to knowledge economies at the same time. They're vastly different. And the implications for the future really are the fastest growing GDP per capita in urban areas are all in cities we don't often think about. Guangzhou, Beijing, Shanghai, Delhi, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Istanbul, Mexico City. They already contain, not the cities, but the countries contain over 50% of the middle class. China has more middle class than we do people. And the discretionary incomes of these countries will double in the next 10 years. So when you think about what's going to drive economic prosperity and what are we all going to be tapping into, it's these people right here. And they already produce most of the world's engineers and scientists. So the world is not going to resemble the past. And the power is going to be distributed much differently. Most future innovations will come from emerging markets because they have so many needs. So the big question for this is, how will we engage successfully across so much diversity? What does this mean? We're going to have cultural innovation. We're going to have economic innovation. We're going to have so much need for good creative problem solving to bring all this together in a productive way. This is right up your alley. Third, the disaggregation of work. We are moving from jobs, it's the end of jobs, it's the end of work as we know it. We're moving to a task-based economy. And we're moving from full-time to Velcro relationships. And the offshoring, this is sort of the beginning of it. What happened with offshoring and automation is it drove a big hole in the middle. If you look at the red going down, those are sort of all those middle jobs that were lost. And we're growing jobs mainly at both ends. There's a shift from people to technology. We're just at the beginning of that. There's going to be more automation. We're going to lose more jobs. There's going to be more smart machines. Robots will augment and extend human capability. We'll see robots everywhere. There'll be more high-end worker, low-end worker gaps. New entrants that come into this marketplace because it's so different. If you've been in it like a boomer for a long time, you have a way of thinking about it. If you're coming in as a millennial, just going through what they've been through in the past 5 years during this great shift and recession, they can't find jobs. There aren't jobs. They have to create their own ways of working and innovating about how do I participate in this economy? What are the options? Again, huge need for divergent thinking. Velcro relationships will dominate, and you're going to have to manage your workforce as a social network because they're not going to be your employees for the most part. This is looking out 10 years, but we're going to get there slowly. These weak signals will turn into trends. And there's going to be a tremendous increase need for continuous learning and training. So one of the big questions is, what is human? What is our comparative advantage in this disruptive cycle of innovation when we have been able to create smart machines that are able to perform so much of what we performed as humans in the economy? That's not to say that I don't think they're there, but again, when you think about the dearth of good thinking, the dearth of divergent thinking within this whole area, it's astounding that we have not gotten there yet. And yet what's happening is there's not enough work to go around, and we're not going to be creating the kinds of jobs. So what's the new economic model for people participating productively in this economy? In the United States, in Brazil, in China. It's a huge, huge issue. And what's our comparative advantage? How do we change ourselves? How do we think about what we have to offer in comparison to the machines? And we'll touch on some of that. So the lesson from these big cycles of disruptive innovation are technology doesn't drive change. It's the human choices that we make about it that drive change. So we're making these choices about what we do with these new technologies and integrating them into our lives. And so we have choices that we can make. So just think about the kinds of choices that you could facilitate with some of the divergent thinking and creative problem solving skills and capacity you have in this room. Are we doing okay?
Yes.
Where are my masters?
How 5 minutes out? 5 minutes.
You want me to wrap up in 5 minutes?
No,
Yeah.
no.
No, go forever. Keep going. We have 20 extra years.
about them, like I said before, they start with weak signals, they become trends, then they grow and they impact, and then they get these disruptive shifts that all add up to the new life. So the next big trend is really, we're going through a digital metamorphosis. And it's interesting, you know, we kind of went from, some of us remember when it was scissors, you know, we used to cut things out of the paper and make all sorts of things. But it's sort of moving from good metaphors, we sort of moved from scissors and cutting things up to a mouse and internet connection. And we've moved from sort of the printing press to social media. So it's interesting to think 1,000 years ago when they moved from, they didn't have the printing press, and how the printing press completely transformed that economy and started us off in how we learn, what we learn from, and how we record information and create knowledge. Now we've got we're moving away from that to social media.